Sometimes the people we trust the most end up teaching us the hardest lessons about love, loyalty, and forgiveness. This emotional story isn't just about a wedding gone wrong. It's about how one hidden promise tested the meaning of commitment and left everyone questioning what true love really is. When Emily Parker's name began trending online, people thought they knew the truth. They called her heartless, a woman who betrayed the man she was supposed to marry. But what if the moment that looked like betrayal was actually the purest act of love? It started months before anyone heard the word wedding. Back then, Emily and Daniel Reed were the couple everyone envied. Sunday brunches, long walks downtown, the kind of quiet laughter that made strangers smile. But lately, Daniel had begun to notice the distance. She came home later than usual. Her phone was always face down. Her mind, somewhere else. At first, he told himself it was stress, that every relationship has seasons. Yet the more he tried to reach her, the more she slipped away. Late at night, she'd whisper, "I just need time to clear my head," then disappear for hours. His friends teased him. "Man, she's probably seeing someone." He laughed it off, but the laughter hurt. One rainy evening, Daniel followed her car through the quiet side streets, heart pounding. She stopped outside an old brick building he didn't recognize. The lights inside flickered softly. He watched from his car as she stepped out, pulled up her hood, and vanished through the door. When she came back out nearly an hour later, her cheeks were streaked with tears, and she was carrying something small wrapped in a blanket. Daniel leaned forward, trying to see. It moved. And that was the night the first crack formed between them. The night he started believing the woman he loved was hiding someone from him. Daniel couldn't shake what he'd seen. That small bundle in Emily's arms haunted him for days. He told himself it was nothing, a favor for a friend, maybe something to do with her work, but the questions kept multiplying. Every time she smiled, he searched her face for an answer she wouldn't give. The next week, she started leaving earlier and coming home later. Her excuses sounded rehearsed. Running errands. Helping someone from church. It's nothing, really. Each phrase was a wall she built higher. One night, curiosity overpowered pride. Daniel waited until she left and followed again. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened beneath the neon reflections of the city. She parked in the same spot near that worn-down brick building. The sign above the door read Harbor Animal Rescue. He frowned. Emily had never mentioned volunteering anywhere. Through the cracked blinds, he saw her kneel beside a cage. A faint whimper reached his ears even through the glass. Then he saw it. A golden retriever, old and trembling, tail thumping weakly as Emily stroked its fur. Her lips moved in words Daniel couldn't hear, but her shoulders shook with quiet sobs. He stepped back, guilt colliding with confusion. Was this the someone she'd been seeing? A dog? It didn't make sense. Why hide that? Why lie about something so innocent? When she came home later that night, her coat smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. Daniel wanted to ask, to demand the truth, but something in her tired eyes stopped him. She looked like a person carrying the weight of a goodbye she hadn't said yet. So he stayed silent. He told himself trust meant patience. But as the weeks passed, Emily's heart drifted further toward a secret that was slowly rewriting the story they thought they were living. By the third week, Daniel's patience had worn down to a thread. Every night she came home later, her eyes red, her voice soft and distant. He'd hear the front door close, then the sound of running water as she washed her hands like she was scrubbing away the world. It wasn't anger that kept him awake. It was fear, the kind that creeps in when you start wondering if you've already lost the person sleeping beside you. Friday evening, he couldn't take it anymore. Emily walked in, hair damp from the drizzle, setting her purse on the counter. Before she could speak, Daniel said quietly, "Where do you go every night?" Her head jerked up. "What? Don't lie to me, Em. I followed you once. Harbor Animal Rescue. You've been there for weeks." "What?" She froze, eyes wide, lips trembling with 1,000 unsaid things. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the rain tapping against the window. Then she whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that." "See what? You sitting with a dog? What's going on?" Emily sank onto the couch, pressing her hands together as if trying to hold herself steady. "His name's Max," she said finally. "He's dying. He was my dog before my parents divorced, before we moved away. He's been at that shelter ever since. They called me when they found my old microchip info. I didn't want you to know because..." She stopped, swallowing hard. Because I knew you wouldn't understand why I had to be there. Daniel stared at her, torn between relief and confusion. You lied for a dog? Tears filled her eyes. Not just a dog, Daniel. The only family I had left that still remembered who I used to be. The words hung between them, soft but heavy enough to shift everything they thought they knew about love and loyalty. For a while, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the rain outside sliding down the windows like quiet tears. Daniel stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. A dog, he kept thinking. All the worry, all the distance, the lies over a dog. Part of him wanted to laugh. The rest of him didn't know how to breathe. Emily wiped her cheeks and whispered, "He doesn't have long." They said maybe a month. I can't just walk away again. Daniel nodded slowly, trying to make sense of it. You could have told me. I would have gone with you. She shook her head. You wouldn't understand what he means to me. Max was there through everything. When my dad left, when Mom worked nights. I used to fall asleep with his paw over my arm. Losing him once nearly broke me. He wanted to say he understood, but jealousy curled in his chest like smoke. She talked about the dog the way people talked about lost lovers. He had never seen her cry like that for him. Over the next few weeks, the air between them thickened. She spent every spare hour at the rescue center, feeding Max by hand, sleeping on the couch when she came home too late to climb into bed. Daniel started avoiding the subject altogether. When friends asked how wedding plans were going, he changed topics. He loved her, but every time he looked at her, he saw distance, an invisible leash pulling her somewhere he couldn't follow. Sometimes, in the quiet, he caught himself wondering which promise she would choose when the time came. The one she made to him, or the one she whispered to a dying dog. Winter crept in quietly, frosting the city with thin sheets of cold light. Emily spent more time at the shelter than at home now, bundled in an old coat, her hair tied back, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Daniel told himself it was temporary, that once the dog passed, things would return to normal. But normal had already slipped away. One night, she didn't come home until after midnight. Daniel was waiting at the kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee in his hands. You missed dinner, he said without looking up. I know. He wouldn't eat tonight. I stayed until he did. He exhaled slowly. Emily, you can't keep doing this. You have a life, a job, a wedding. Her voice cracked. He's dying, Daniel. What am I supposed to do? Just let him be alone. The words hit the walls like thunder. Silence followed. For a moment, he saw the woman he fell in love with, tender, fierce, loyal to the end, and it made his chest ache. I'm not asking you to stop caring, he said softly. I'm asking you to let me in. She blinked at him, tears trembling at the edge of her lashes. You don't need to fix this. I just need you to let me say goodbye my way. He wanted to argue, to tell her how it felt to lose her piece by piece, but the way she said goodbye stopped him. It sounded final, like something larger than either of them. That night, Daniel lay awake beside the empty side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane. Somewhere across the city, Emily sat on the shelter floor, holding Max's head in her lap, whispering to him like he was the only one who could still hear her heart. The call came early on a gray Tuesday morning. Daniel was still half asleep when Emily's ringtone pierced the quiet. She slipped out of bed, answered, and within seconds her hand flew to her mouth. I'll be right there, she whispered. Then she was gone. By the time Daniel arrived at the shelter, the parking lot was nearly empty. He found her inside, sitting on the cold floor beside an empty blanket. Her hair clung to her face, her hands still trembling. The air smelled of disinfectant and sorrow. He's gone, she murmured when she saw him. Her voice was barely a sound. He waited until I got here. I held him, and then he just went to sleep. Daniel knelt beside her, unsure what to do. He wanted to hold her, but something told him this grief didn't belong to him. It was too deep, too old. For the rest of the day, she didn't speak much. She moved like a ghost through their apartment, quiet, polite, hollow. The wedding invitations lay unopened on the counter. When friends called to confirm plans, she let the phone ring. That night, as Daniel sat alone in the living room, he found an old photo on her desk. Emily at 12, holding a golden puppy, both grinning at the camera like the world was still kind. On the back, in fading pen, were 3 words, "Forever my friend." It was then he realized that Max hadn't just been a dog. He'd been her anchor to a time when love was simple and safe. before life taught her how fragile it all could be. Daniel turned the photo over and whispered, "Goodbye, Max." In that moment, he understood that sometimes loving someone means standing quietly beside their pain, even when you don't understand it. Days passed like slow-moving clouds, heavy and gray. Emily barely spoke. The apartment felt colder, quieter, even when the heater hummed. The framed engagement photos on the wall looked like strangers now, two people smiling at a future they didn't know would fall apart. Daniel tried to keep things normal. He cooked dinner, made coffee, talked about the wedding when he could. But every time he mentioned it, her eyes flickered away. "I just need more time," she'd whisper. Time to heal, to breathe, to stop seeing Max every time she closed her eyes. At first he gave her that space. He told himself she'd find her way back. But the silence stretched longer each day, until even the smallest moments, like brushing shoulders in the hallway, felt foreign. One evening, he found her sitting on the floor by the couch, holding Max's old collar. "It still smells like him," she said softly. Daniel sat beside her, unsure what to say. He reached out and touched her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't look at him either. "I miss you," he said finally. Her voice cracked. "I miss me too." Those words hit deeper than any argument ever could. It wasn't him she was running from. It was the version of herself she'd lost when Max died. The wedding date crept closer, but love doesn't follow calendars. Invitations went unanswered. The dress stayed in its box. Daniel could feel their story slipping through invisible cracks, one quiet day at a time. And yet, beneath all the sadness, something unexpected began to take shape. A fragile understanding that love sometimes has to break before it can rebuild. What Daniel didn't know was that Emily had made a promise the night Max died. One that would lead to a shocking moment no one saw coming on their wedding day. The morning sun spilled softly through the white curtains of the bridal suite, but Emily didn't feel its warmth. Her hands trembled as she buttoned her dress, every click echoing like a countdown she wasn't ready for. The mirror reflected a picture-perfect bride, lace, pearls, a practiced smile, but inside she felt hollow. Outside, guests were arriving. Laughter, chatter, the sound of cameras clicking. It should have been the happiest day of her life. Instead, it felt like a promise she didn't know how to keep. Daniel waited at the altar, adjusting his tie again and again, trying to calm his nerves. He hadn't seen her all morning. Every second felt like an hour. He kept telling himself she'd walk through those doors, and everything, the silence, the distance, the grief, would somehow make sense. In the dressing room, Emily sat for a long time, clutching a small silver locket in her hands. Inside was a tiny piece of Max's fur and the photo of them from her childhood. She'd promised him, the night he died, that she would carry his love into the next chapter of her life, and that she'd find the courage to live again. A soft knock came at the door. "Em, it's time," her maid of honor said gently. Emily stood, heart pounding. She looked at her reflection one last time and whispered, "Stay with me, Max." When the doors opened, everyone stood. The music swelled. But as she took her first steps down the aisle, her vision blurred, not from nerves, but from the weight of every memory flooding back. Daniel smiled when he saw her, relief washing over his face. He didn't notice the tears spilling down hers, or the quiet trembling of her hands holding the locket. No one did. Not yet. Because what would happen in the next few minutes would leave the entire room stunned, and the internet talking for months. The music softened as Emily reached the front. Daniel took her hands, smiling through misty eyes. "You look beautiful," he whispered. The guests sighed, phones ready, hearts full. Everything looked perfect, until the officiant spoke. "Before we begin," he said, "the bride has something she wishes to say." Daniel turned, surprised. Emily's lips trembled. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she stepped forward, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "I know everyone here expects to see a happy ending today," she began. "But love isn't just about the perfect moments. It's about the hard ones too, the ones that test who we really are." The crowd shifted, curious. Daniel frowned slightly, sensing the change in the air. Emily opened the small locket around her neck. Inside, the sunlight caught the golden strand of fur. "A few weeks ago, I lost someone who taught me what love really means. Max wasn't just my dog. He was my family, the one who stayed when everyone else left." A ripple of whispers moved through the guests. Some smiled softly. Others exchanged puzzled glances. I spent months visiting him in secret, she continued, her voice breaking. Not because I wanted to hide something from Daniel, but because I didn't know how to explain the kind of love that isn't romantic, but still sacred. The kind that changes how you love everyone after. Daniel's eyes softened as understanding dawned. She wasn't confessing betrayal. She was confessing grief. Emily took a deep breath. I made a promise to Max that when I stood here today, I'd choose love that lasts. The kind that forgives, that stays, that never gives up. For a long, quiet second, no one moved. Then Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes glistening. Then let's keep that promise, together. The crowd rose in applause, some crying, some smiling. Cameras flashed, capturing the exact moment truth replaced judgment. The story would go viral within hours, not because a bride had cheated. The video spread online before the couple even left the reception. Someone had recorded Emily's trembling confession at the altar, the locket, the story of Max, Daniel's tearful understanding. Within hours, the clip had millions of views. Headlines twisted and reshaped the truth. Bride's emotional confession stuns guests. She cheated with a dog? The truth will break you. At first, Emily didn't want to read the comments. She'd lived enough of the misunderstanding already. But one night, she opened her laptop and found thousands of strangers writing things like, I lost my dog last year. This hit home. And this is what loyalty looks like. Daniel read beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Guess Max got his audience after all, he said softly. Emily smiled through tears. He always did like attention. Weeks later, they visited the rescue center together. A new litter of puppies had arrived, tumbling over each other in the corner pen. One tiny golden one stumbled toward Emily and licked her hand. She laughed, a sound Daniel hadn't heard in months. It was the kind of laughter that heals something you didn't realize was broken. They adopted the pup that day. On the way home, Emily held it close, whispering, Thank you, Max. That night, she placed the old collar and locket side by side on the shelf. Two symbols, one of a love that had to end, and one of a love just beginning. When people asked later why her story had touched millions, Emily always gave the same answer. Because everyone knows what it feels like to lose something they thought would last forever. And if you're lucky, you learn that love never really leaves. It just finds new ways to stay. The internet had called it a scandal, but those who truly listened heard what it really was, a love story disguised as heartbreak. And that's what shocked everyone most of all.